So JumpCrew historically has been in a very saturated competitive landscape. You could describe what we do as lead generation, outsource sales, B2B sales companies, sales agency. Broadly, you could zoom out and people would very frustratingly to me say cold callers, telemarketing, appointment setting. That is a component of what we do, but unfortunately, it continued to bucket us in this massive market of companies that really emphasize appointment setting, appointment setting, appointment setting. When you go to G2, there were 140 different companies that had a profile categorized as outsourced sales companies. You type in outsourced sales into Google, everybody's paying a premium on a sponsored Google ad to try to get your attention. If you flip to the next slide, Guillermo, even if you just type into Google outsourcing sales companies, you tell me if you can find JumpCrew on this slide. You have to like really go looking for it, because we're just in this highly commoditized space where really anybody could open a laptop, grab a cell phone, put an LLC on it, call themselves Cold Calling Solutions LLC, and they could say, we build the best LinkedIn outbound strategies, and we make 100 dials a day, and we have the best sales sequences. And it's just completely commoditizing down to the bottom. And so this has been really frustrating for me. You can flip to the next slide. So it's like, if we're going to do this, we have to consider how have we been positioning ourselves now, and is there a way we can carve out something slightly different? What you're seeing right now is what our homepage has looked like for the better part of the past year and a half or so. We're like, how can we just very simply explain that we build B2B sales teams, right? That seemed like the easiest way to just do what everybody else was doing, but explain it very simply. Although we know that what JumpCrew does includes sales teams, while we also know sales teams can't be successful without marketing, can't be successful without operations, can't be successful without strategy that's custom to the market opportunity or the product. We said, hey, it seems like everybody gets B2B sales teams, so let's lean into that. So this was basically our above the fold. We build B2B sales teams that create pipeline and drive revenue. Like, okay, that seems clear. This is us just like talking about this in a room. This makes sense to us. Let's put some logos of companies that we work with. People will get it. You can flip to the next slide. Let's do a little validation. So we put a couple of reviews up there. Yep, people are going to love that because that's going to help them understand that people like us. And then we'll put these little boxes at the bottom that are little value props. Experienced salespeople, executive leaders, rapid launch timeline. Yeah, dude, this sounds awesome. We're high-fiving. This is so clear. This looks great. We'll put a couple of these like, bogus clutch badges that they give you to make you feel good, and we'll slap those on there too, and we'll call it a win, right? This was literally our entire homepage. So you had that above the fold, this section, a couple of these little cells, and then our badges in a book meeting. So I felt pretty good about this. I actually thought, if you'd seen our website before this was actually an improvement. So we're feeling pretty good at this point. But if you go to the next slide, this before required us to consider whether or not this is the direction we wanted to go in the future. So I was actively thinking about how we're going to make the most of this publicist. And I remembered hearing Chris Walker, who some folks on this call may know, may not. But if you're on LinkedIn for more than like 5 minutes, you probably have seen him. And I remember him mentioning this company called Winter that he had used to test market positioning messaging. And I looked in my email. The first time I ever emailed myself a reminder like, hey, check out Winter, was on December 6th of 2022. So like the buying journey for me was pretty much a year and a half of that need having to become a reality. So that's just a little bit of an aside. We want that immediate dopamine hit of getting like instant gratification when we're selling. Like, I'm going to make a cold call and someone's going to answer. But it took me almost 2 years before the need arose that I had heard an expert speak about something that they were using and explain their experience. And it was the first thing I thought of. So you go to the next slide. It's like, oh, let's check out this Winter thing. So myself, our VP of marketing, our CEO, and our SVP of partnerships came up with a framework. We're like, okay, if we're going to go through this, let's do this in a couple of phases. First, let's just do a general survey. Let's ask some questions of our ICP and see if we can learn, like, is the way we see the world the way other people see the world, or are we crazy? Let's go from that and see if we can't like test some positioning, some different ways of explaining what we do, and see if anything resonates. And then let's go one layer deeper based on that, and let's actually build a landing page and see how people interact with that page. Does that make sense? This was all new to us. We had never done this at any time in JumpCrew. We had always just in a room come up with what we thought made sense, people who are very close to the product, people who live in it every day, and let's put it out there and people are going to love it, right? So this was all very new for us. So we started with step one. So Guillermo, you can flip to the next slide. Let's do a little bit of a survey. So we wrote some questions around, what's it like integrating sales and marketing for you? How do you align these things? This is all through Winter, by the way. You can build these custom surveys. You can select your persona, and they'll actually go out and source folks who have opted in to participate in some of these surveys based on their persona, their job title, industry, company size. So we built that criteria. We wrote a couple of questions. And some of my favorite questions that we included were open-ended. And the questions were things like, if you were going to create a team that was sales and marketing together, what would you call that? And we let people give us open-ended responses. We said, then we came up with some of ideas on our own. Like, if you go to the next slide, I think we put like revenue as a service or your customer acquisition. And these were some of the responses that came back. The question was, if a team was created to be collectively responsible for sales, marketing, and RevOps, what would you call that team? We had 15 respondents in this initial survey, and these were some of the responses. The beauty of this open-ended question, which interestingly, aside from all the other like kind of more survey-based questions, just like pick one of these A, B, C, D, these were the most valuable because we just let people kind of tell us customer acquisition, growth, revenue, rev gen, their growth, business development. Like, okay, seems like people are trying to put a title on this thing, and some of these words make sense to us. If you go to the next slide, Guillermo. We also fed them some answers to see if any of these resonated. We were like revenue as a service, customer acquisition as a service, B2B. I loved the word stack. I was obsessed with this thing like revenue growth stack. It was like, I was obsessed with it. And I was so sure that was the direction we were going to go. And then we put an other field where they had to write some other suggestions, go-to-market team, growth as a service, something with go-to-market revenue. And so kind of like got our wheels turning, like people are giving us some ideas here. Maybe there's something we can suss out of this that is inherently unique, that is effectively one of its kind, that we're kind of crowdsourcing from our potential buyers. You can go to the next slide. So we're feeling pretty good directionally about some of these ideas that might better describe the totality of things that we offer. We're not outsourced sales. We're not a marketing agency. We do both of those, but there isn't really a way to explain them talking to each other, working together. So let's try to see if we can use those takeaways from the survey and then frame that as actual positioning. So that took us from phase one to phase two, which you can go to the next slide. So for phase two, all we did was an above the fold messaging test. We took that above the fold on our website, just the screenshot you see here, and did growth as a service, the go-to-market stack, the revenue growth stack, and this little paragraph underneath it. JumpCrew bundles sales, marketing, operations, and strategy to accelerate speed to market for B2B companies. Test number one. We're like, okay, Winter, you folks tell us what makes sense to you. So you can go to the next slide. Not only did we get some statistical feedback, albeit not necessarily definitive, we got open-ended feedback. Hey, I felt like I understood this. This resonates with me. I feel this is applicable to me. This is more specific. So granted, this was a little bit all over the board, but we're getting more qualitative feedback to understand what people in the job titles that we want to sell to were actually saying about the messaging we were testing. Now, funny enough, something about this process is difficult, especially when you've been at the same company for a long time. It's basically like I don't know who has kids. Like I have a 2.5-year-old. And so it'd be like me taking my kid to school and his teacher being like, that's the outfit you decided to put Theo in today. It's like, whoa. Like this he likes tractors. I don't know, like he's wearing a tractor shirt. So effectively, you're having people kind of tear apart what you think makes sense, and you have to be prepared for that. And if you flip to the next slide, like we had to be comfortable with this. Like, I don't love any of these. This was not uncommon. And in fact, I'd say that a larger percentage of the feedback was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I don't love this. And reading that is hard. And I think maybe there's this like subconscious part of us that maybe avoids this step in the process because we're too nervous about what the market might actually say, that we'd rather build something that we feel good about than build something that the market actually wants. And this was a very self-deprecating exercise. But I think, as you'll see as we go through this, it worked out pretty well. Now, on this slide, there was one of these that really stood out to us. And I think that's going to become clear here in a second. But we loved, as an organization, we kept coming back to growth as a service. Like that spoke to us in a way that even in spite of it not ranking highly on here, not having the best of feedback, it kept feeling personal to us. And if you flip to the next slide and play the video, as we were struggling with this, one of my favorite quotes was—
the consumer didn't want Jimmy.
Sorry, did you want the audio?
Yeah, please. If you can start it over.
Didn't want Jimi Hendrix, but they got him, and it changed the world. And the consumer didn't want Sgt. Pepper's, but they got it. And they didn't want the Sex Pistols, but they got it. Fuck the customer. The customer doesn't know what he wants. You fucking give it to him, and he likes it. And now there's an attitude in the music business where it's like, well, let's keep the consumer happy because that's what makes the music business go around. Let's put it this way. If a fashion house is a record label, right? Like Dior or all those big fashion houses, do you think fashion would stay the same if they asked the consumer what they wanted to wear next summer? Why fashion always moves forward and we all look different and have different haircuts and we're all different because fashion doesn't focus group it to its fucking customers. Customers are idiots. 99% of them are fucking idiots.
Now,
you know?
Of course, this is
not my customers. They're fucking brilliant. You're brilliant, and I respect.
Of course, this is in a way going to seem contradictory to my whole ethos here, but there has to be a balance. Like you can be slave to all of this feedback and continually try to tweak and 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 never quite get to a place where you're going to get 100% on everything. But as we were getting more of this open-ended feedback, what we felt validated in was the theme, the growth as a service. But we were learning was that if we were going to lean into that, we had to make it make sense. And if you go to the next slide,
the consumer didn't,
where the real hard work started to happen. So the next phase is if we're going to lean into growth as a service, which we're seeing come up in some of the feedback from our ICP, how do we make it make sense? Because I kind of want to force this down people's throat and I want it to be our thing. And that, when you think back to that slide that had those dozens of other sales outsourcing companies on there, I don't want to be on that. If somebody searches growth as a service, there should be one, and it should be us. And that's what we wanted at that point. And so if you flip to the next slide, please. So we came up with our first interpretation of growth as a service. This was our V1. We're like, okay, we need to test messaging around this. If we're going to lean into it, how can we make this work? So we used Figma. You can use Adobe or any of these kind of website mockups and created a static website mockup. This is before we did any development on the actual website. So we took the concept, growth as a service. You'll see in the paragraph underneath that is very similar kind of sub-paragraph. We were feeling pretty good about that, at least in how clear it was. And then we started to see, how do we need to explain this? Okay, so for us, our model is sales teams, marketing, revenue operations, data and reporting, strategy. How do we explain those things? Maybe those need to be unique products that we actually show on the website so that there's no mincing words about like what we actually do. So this V1 was, let's put that above the fold. Let's clearly explain underneath our logos here what this thing is, and then let's show what the products are and the companies that work with us, right? So this is what we submitted for the next phase of our growth, of our winter testing, which if you go to the next slide, was another exercise in taking our own medicine, right? So all of the feedback we got here was, first of all, my favorite is, what does jump ship do, which obviously isn't even our company name. So I appreciate that. I'm unclear what the service is. How does this work with my existing programs? You're like an inbound agency, but you're just not willing to say it. I don't know what the offer is. The value and benefits don't make sense. Who's your ideal customer? We were like, whoa, geez, like we are clearly not communicating this, and we're doing ourselves a disservice if we think that we can just put like this teaser on our website and assume people are going to go, wow, I just can't wait to learn more about this company that doesn't make any sense. Like this was the best phase of this because we doubled the amount of respondents. Instead of 15, we did 30, and all 30 basically said, I just don't understand, right? So if you go to the next slide, actually go two more, Guillermo, the next one and the next one. The takeaways we had from that phase were, what is the service? How does it work? What's the value? Why would I do this versus something else? What types of companies do you work with? It seems like you're an agency, but you're not willing to say it. Is it people or is it software? And so my VP of marketing and I said, we have to answer every one of these questions. And I don't know how we're going to go about doing it, but for us to feel like this has worked, we have to answer all of these questions at face value because we clearly haven't done that. So if you go to the next slide and click the link, what I want to do is I want to show you the results of how we went about doing that. And if you'll go to the actual URL, I'll show you what is now live on our website and give you a quick little overview of how we got there.
You want me to click on the link, yeah?
Please, if you'll just click on the URL, the JumpCrew.com URL.
Give me just a second.
Sure. And this is live now, obviously. This took us a little while to put the pieces together to get this to a place where we felt good about it. What we found was that we could take up a bunch of real estate on the website by doing text and visuals and just trying to explain every nook and cranny of it, or we can do what we do best, which I'm going to explain here in just a second. So what we stuck with was growth as a service. And then in the subheader, you'll see some slight tweaks. JumpCrew is a growth agency. So the word agency was meant to distinguish we're not software. We are a collection of people with expertise across our business. And we bundle sales teams. So we didn't just say sales teams, marketing, operations, and strategy to accelerate. We use that word because a lot of the feedback was, I want to go quickly. New business for B2B companies. So B2B is important because we don't work with B2C companies. We really only do B2B. So let's just make that distinction at the top. If you keep moving down the page, Guillermo, just slowly, we kept this validation section of our clients. And then for the what we provide, this is the, okay, what do you get? We leaned into video. So if you keep scrolling down, Guillermo, and you can just show these videos in the paragraphs. We created one setup here in our office.
Building a sales team is hard. It's complicated. It's risky. JumpCrew handles that entire process from front to back for you and helps you scale over time.
With that comes different layers of management, sales managers, team leads, directors, VPs and above.
We handle recruiting and hiring top talent. We build a training plan to help those reps get acclimated to the pitch, handle objections.
It comes with a whole slew of operations support who's really there to help the sellers and the sales management understand what's working and
So we filmed one of these videos for each of the products that we consider part of our GAS model, our growth as a service model, where we took those questions from that other slide and we wrote the script for each of these videos to directly address each one of those questions. So we knew that it was covered. We added a little bit of paragraph text underneath it for whatever people read, but we led, what's highlighted is the problem. So the problem, building a sales team is complicated, time consuming and risky. The problem, successful sales teams have to have top of funnel marketing support. You can keep scrolling down. So we did this for our 5 primary products: sales, marketing, RevOps, account management, and reporting. So our ability to show we're real people, look in our office, here's the level of professionalism you can expect. We can articulate the problem. Video looks nice, keeps people on the page. And then we can state the problem with a small paragraph. Keep scrolling down, please. We then created these buckets where we said, here are the different types of clients we work with. This was one of the questions, right? We work with early stage, and we made it very specific: employee range and revenue. Mid-market, employee range and revenue. enterprise, employee range, and revenue, and we put logos of the companies that we work with in each of those categories. So visitors can self-identify when they're here and say, oh, okay, I see they work with someone like me at early stage, but as we grow, they have experience at these other phases. Or, if you bucket yourself in mid-market or enterprise or otherwise. So this answers the question of, well, who do you work with? They look like big logos, so this probably isn't for me. Keep going down the page. We leaned into this use cases. So if you're trying to bucket yourself, we're less vertical than we are use case, because we've literally sold everything from enterprise software for B2B CFOs to, I kid you not, Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I have literally cold called into pizza shops around the US and sold Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and everywhere in between. So we talk about use cases, going to market, vertical testing, scaling quickly. Everybody who has a product or service is fitting into one of these use cases. So they're like, one of these makes sense to me. I'm in one of those buckets. I see the companies they've worked with. I understand their product. And if you go down to the process, the like, how does it work? You can kind of slowly scroll on this, Guillermo. You don't necessarily have to stop, but we want to just kind of walk you down the funnel as a visitor on our website of how we move customers through, or potential customers down through our process. So putting the gas concept into practice through our how it works model. And then I think the very last section at the bottom down here is where we highlighted some of these quick kind of social validation, social proof. Funny enough, we don't even have those testimonials on the website. Probably might consider putting those on here, but we thought that these were sufficient enough for now. And then if you keep scrolling down to the very bottom, I think it's just, oh, this was my favorite one. The why, right? The why. JumpCrew versus in-house. We've interviewed all of our customers. We've talked to hundreds and hundreds of prospects, and there's 3 reasons why people work with us. I need to go faster. It's too risky to do it on my own, or too expensive, or I don't have the bandwidth. And so we just highlighted those as another layer of self-identification. So I've got my why, I've got my how, I've got my who, and I've got my what. And it's all covered on this one page. The last thing that you have at the bottom is just a link to some of our resources and the book a meeting at the bottom, and that's it. So our application of those winter takeaways translated to a page that we felt very confident has directly addressed all of those questions that came up through that process. So this is live. We rebranded all of our social media pages to reflect this gas messaging, the gas imagery. You'll see our organic social that's going out, and any of our paid, both Google and social, is all going to be representative of this gas pivot. Growth as a service is such a low search volume right now that we're running paid search against that, so that if anyone is by chance hearing about it and searches it, we're the first thing to show up. And we're really leaning now into that PR strategy where we have an exclusive article that's going to be coming out relatively soon announcing the gas repositioning, all following this work being done, because now we feel pretty damn good about the fact that this is something that makes sense, it's clear, it's unique to us, and it didn't have to cannibalize our existing products or services by doing it. So now we can genuinely say, what does JumpCrew do? We bundle sales teams, marketing, operations, and strategy to accelerate customer acquisition for B2B companies. We call that growth as a service. And then bam, that's the punchline that everybody at the company is going to be able to repeat over and over and over again. Cool. So I know it's really fast. We got 7 minutes left. I don't know, Shane, if you had a point of view. I know that you and I hadn't really connected before this. I kind of just was like, yo, Shane, you want to jump in this thing? And
yeah. I mean,
if you had any thoughts from the winter perspective.
One is we got to get this case study up once you guys get some results rolling. I mean, it's great to see. I talk to so many customers every day about doing this, and it's rare that I get to sit down and see how, how people are really using it in detail like this. And I think, the biggest reason this sort of research is so relevant is because as an industry in B2B SaaS, we just never did it. Like every other industry ever over-invested in research to the point of like, it's very waterfall, right? You research, you name the product, you build the product, then you launch and you hope and you pray. B2B, SaaS, and services, because everything is software and services and there's nothing tangible, and we have the ability to always just pivot and change, we just aggressively adopted, put something live, see how it goes, and then change it if it's not working. And so really for the past 15 years of B2B SaaS and services, no one has stopped to say, could we talk to our ICP and see what we can learn? And there's really been no accessible way from a timing standpoint. Until winter, it was like hire an agency, wait 90 days, and maybe they'll build a panel, do some research. You're going to pay 40 grand. And it's just, by the time you've learned something, you've already moved on. So, seeing companies that are like, JumpCrew, that are willing to even slow down a little bit so that they can speed up and get faster is still pretty rare these days. Your competitors are probably not doing it. And, just the fact that winter, has it's all because we have the panel ready to go right now. Your results come back in 24 hours and you can test and learn and test and learn. And I love seeing how, like, you guys hit a point to where it's like, okay, we're not getting a for sure answer, but there's enough information here to start making some very informed guesses. And so you're still mostly relying on your gut, your creativity, understanding your market, but having those extra points of validation will it's very subtle. You know what you can for sure let go of, and you get really confident about where to really lean in on. So, I mean, I think this is just fantastic. I think you did a great job. Honestly, like, even if I wasn't with Winter, I'd be like, oh, this dude, they did a great job. So, man, awesome. I hope half of our customers, or even a sliver of our customers, could be as effective as you guys have been with our platform, because I know there's just such an impact that can be made through this sort of stuff. And honestly, I've demoed it hundreds of times. It is the most boring, simple thing. It's just qualitative research, but it's so profound right now because no one's doing it, And
if you want a great example, like if you go to Winter's website, it's amazing just how human the text is. Like, they're not trying to pretend to be anything. It's just so natural and human and like just normal speak. There's no buzzwords. It's just very explicitly clear and simple. And I think that if we can,
testing, we've tested so much, it's crazy.
Yeah, like if we can just break the change of that, I need to sound like this huge enterprise thing and come up with this great, amazing terminology. Like, people just don't get it, man. Like,
they want to know what you do really quickly. Yeah. And it's not easy to get down to that, like, really kind of boiled down, like, this is what makes sense. But that's what we always talk about with messaging. It's clarity, resonance, differentiation. First, can you get it to make sense? Okay, great. Now can you get it to resonate? Okay, great. Now can you get it to differentiate? You're not going to do all that in your headline, but when you kind of work through those gates kind of in succession, like you guys have done, then you can. It's really great.
Did anyone have any questions about anything, either for the group, for Shane, for myself? I would love to I'll share the deck with this group after the fact, just so you have it as a reference. But if anyone had any thoughts or questions or comments, certainly would love to open the floor for that, because I know I've done a lot of talking.
So I actually, I'm sorry.
You can go first, April.
Thank you. We're having in-house battles right now around this topic specifically. Our company's been around almost 30 years and decided we're too vague, and we are, let's niche down into something. So our CEO, based on his experience with talking to people in the community and different businesses and business leaders, says this is what we need to do. We go into this whole new launch of what our services are, and we have many voices in the background going, does the market want this? So there's a lot of pressure on our marketing team to promote this new business unit that we've created based on a bunch of people in a room that said this sounds like a good idea. Which is why I'm here, we have some voices in the room that are saying we have to do market research. We have to see if this is what people want. And it seems like that is getting, like, we know what they want. We don't need to do this background check on what people actually want. And so I would just like to ask, like, you, Jarron, or Shane, or anybody in the group, how you effectively communicate that with your leadership teams to say this is something that is important and does show more proven results. Kind of what Shane said, like, we're slowing down to speed up. And I'm a huge believer in that, but not always sitting at the leadership table can we get that message across.
I mean,
go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, like, one of the like things I've said 1,000 times. If you're not doing consumer research, you're just arguing with each other, which is a vital part of the process. You can't remove the discourse that is had. That's collaboration. So by no means do we think that like that should be replaced with research. It's just adding that in, because at the end of the day, if we can't point to some validation from not our existing customers, but our ICP that don't know who we are and have no bias toward us, if we can't create that third person in the conversation, then at the end of the day, it's really boils down to who's willing to fight the longest, because whoever fights the longest, their idea will win. At a certain point, and especially, you know, the longer you've been in your career, you learn it's like, it's not even worth fighting for, because if you had to fight to the death for your idea, then everyone's watching that idea and they know it was your idea, you know? So it's like, are you willing to even do that? Or if no one's going to fight for the idea, the executive in the room has to make the decision. Again, those are not inherently bad things, but we kind of like, it often boils down to that. I've been in those, I've worked in so many startups over the years in sales and marketing and growth before Winter, and have been the person that fought to the death for the idea, or been the executive that just made the call, or had an executive make the call. And sometimes you get it right, but still you're guessing. And when we take those guesses that have zero validation from the outside, we go split test those ideas. And then we say, great, this one works better than that one. But we have no idea if those ideas are even near the ceiling of how good the ideas can be. And so I always tell people, like, we're often just split testing two terrible ideas and figuring out which is less terrible. So it's so easy to be like, hey, why don't we just take these 4 questions, put in them a survey, and they're going, and assuming Winter has the audience you need, because they don't always, and we'll have the results back tomorrow. Can everyone wait till tomorrow, right? Which is often faster than, you know, reaching a, you know, debate-driven decision. So it's easy to bring that kind of third-party ICP into the room, I think, when you really kind of buy in as a team. Really relieves a lot of that stress to make a decision without it.
There's a level of kind of manual work that can help support that too, April, is if you've got any sellers that are willing to just ask a question like, hey, just out of curiosity, like, you know, kind of what's your understanding of what we do? And then you just catalog that one, and you catalog the next one, and you catalog the next one. And typically when you're having a hard time hitting revenue numbers, which, you know, for us is something that we weren't immune to. A lot of folks are experiencing challenges finding pipeline and closing deals right now. Like, we were struggling to hit numbers that were always getting bigger every month. We're like, there's got to be a reason why, you know, there's no worries. Thanks so much, Jeannie. So that's, you can kind of in a way have a better case when things aren't going well. Be like, things are going great, it's a little bit harder to poke the bear. But when things are going, you know, a little rough, that's maybe the time to you know, to look in the mirror.
Can I ask a question, or somebody was ahead of me? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, Noosh, got you.
Hey, the question I was going to ask, great presentation, by the way. The question I was going to ask is, the process that we covered today was very well understood in terms of listening to customers for, say, an existing product or a business space. But going back to that video you played, right? If you're trying to listen to your customers for products that they don't know they need, that you could build, that are creative and that don't exist, is the process to you similar, or how would you, I mean, I think I know the answer here, but I want to get your perspective on how does that change in a situation where trying to crack into a market with a product that nobody's ever even dreamt of?
It's so funny you asked that. I'm actually writing something for Built-In right now about that exact topic of, like, in my opinion, if you're going to take a product to market, or think you have a product that you want to take to market, the impulse often is to, well, I got to get a sales team, which is probably the biggest mistake you can possibly make. There's like this kind of go-to-market waterfall concept that I believe in, which is very founder-led research, marketing, and then sales before you ever consider operationalizing anything. And I think that the Winter application, or at least the concept of that, can apply to taking something completely new to market. If I said, I want to design an umbrella that's upside down, it captures the water when it's raining, right? Just for a dumb example. Like, there are ways for me to go about researching that that go good, better, best. Good is I build a prototype. I just start asking people, friends, family, try this out. Is there anybody who's an expert in umbrellas? Hey, I want you to take a look at this. This is all very manual. There's kind of that old adage in the startup world, like do things that don't scale first. And so you're doing all this really manual work. Then let's say you get enough people saying, no, I'd never thought about having an upside down umbrella. That's kind of interesting. Then the people who showed some level of interest, I'd be indexing any common denominators. Are they older? Are they younger? Where do they live? What are their job titles? Okay, I'm seeing maybe a theme here. Then I would build just an Insta page. You can spend $80 to build an Insta page. We say you shouldn't be blocking the rain. You should be capturing it, like whatever your header is, right? And then you explain some of the feedback you got from these people who said that makes more sense because this, that, other thing. And then the next phase is to start getting feedback through, let's say, winter in this case, on that landing page and that messaging, using those criteria of the people, that ICP that you're kind of testing. And then you're slowly snowballing that process on this completely conceptual concept. At most, I think through that doing work that doesn't scale, maybe if you felt like you wanted to create a LinkedIn page and run a few ads here and there, like you can validate whether or not the market wants a product for a couple $100 before you ever decide, okay, I need a website. I'm gonna need a sales team. I got to get an LLC. Like, what's my logo gonna be? Like, those are the things that I think us very ambitious entrepreneurial types are like. I'm gonna build the next Airbnb.
This helps.
Like, slow down to go fast is, I think, absolute best takeaway from this.
This helps too, and what you described here, right, is actually exactly the approach we've been taking and approach we plan to take with JumpCrew for our project here in ZF. So that helps. Thank you.
I can't remember where I heard this, but there's a saying: "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." I can't remember what that context was. I think it was a sports thing, but I think Shane said the best takeaway from this whole thing is that slow down to speed up before you invest a ton of resources or capital into something, because what that leads into is you're going to have terrible margins. You're going to have frustrated salespeople who can't hit their number. They're going to churn, or you're going to have to fire them, and that cycle is going to repeat over and over and over again.
Thank you.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast is a Navy SEAL phrase. Yeah, it's a Navy SEAL's mantra. So there we go. Cool. I think that's it. The end.
I love it. Guys, Jarron, Shane, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, so informative, so great to see everything you guys are doing. Please, if you guys have any questions, let's all stay connected. If you want to put anything in the chat, please do. But Jarron, cheers to you, to JumpCrew, and hopefully we need to do a tequila tasting very soon. I think that's in the works.
April's hosting that one.
There you go, exactly. Awesome. Well, guys, cheers to you all, and hopefully see you very soon. Cheers. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.